Hello, so I'm just catching up from the weekend because of Bushroad's Springfest to Antwerp, and well, I've not had the chance to really react to this. So here I am, uh, after a whole weekend. Obviously, it's been like what 4 days now since the reveals, so I'm a bit late, but better late than never. We managed to win in V Premium and Premium, so it's been pretty hectic over the course of those 4 days. But to start with, the Oracle Think Tank Stride, some sort of Dragon King, which is pretty cool. Basically, it has a Susano-like ability, so it's sort of like a dream ability of mine because I've always wanted to be able to use Susano while striding at the same time. So this card is one way of doing that. It could have been like a stride over like Marduk or something, or that new Dark Regular stride, but this also does it for me. And you're basically what you're doing is using Susano, but without keeping all the cards in your hand necessarily, because any normal unit you get in your reveals go to the field. However, you're doing one more additional check to Susano. So what makes this even more interesting is that you know how you've got like those cards that can soul charge grade threes, like for example Fio, which also requires your opponent being on grade three. Well, this is a way of sort of doing that without having to play into Fios and use up the CB and everything. So this sort of fulfills the function of like a Susano with a grade 3 in Soul, except you have to call your normal units. That's the only difference. But an advantage of that is that although you have to call them, which means you can't necessarily turn that into hand, and it might also mess up your Puffy cards, especially, the plus side is that you can then apply the triggers onto your normal units if you have nothing that you want to target. So suddenly you call a unit and then just like that, oh, I actually want to put triggers on that new card I just revealed. So you do have that advantage. And you're doing it off the top three as well, so you've got a bit of a wider net. So it's pretty good. Obviously, it scales into late game, but you'll probably be using other strides by then, potentially. So yeah, this is a really, really interesting card, and it's basically Susano while having Generation Break 2, because an issue is that say your opponent rides up first, and then you ride up. Well, then if you want to use Susano, that means you can't gain Generation Break, even though Susano has a really cool turn 3 ability compared to some of the other cards out there, because you're not really doing that much with a lot of the other grade 3s usually, although we do have a few now that can do something, but I feel like Susano is the more spicier one amongst the it's kind of better than a lot of the first strides are, if I'm quite honest. There is Sterling Witch Momo, but that thing is not fun because you're shredding your hand. So you're literally shredding your hand, going all or nothing, just so you can try and kill your opponent on first stride. And I just don't like that sort of playstyle. Or not even just kill your opponent first stride, because if it's not about killing them on first stride, then it's basically just about advancing damage, but then you're just more fragile and vulnerable to losing the game more easily, which just isn't really that interesting, and it doesn't really feel like it fits in with the theme as well for Oracle Think Tank as much, because it looks like it belongs in a subclan rather than the generic stuff, because a lot of the generic Oracle strides are nobles or Japanese mythology cards. So that's also another thing I don't like. Like Momo just didn't really feel like it fit with the theme, but this new card does. It just looks like a welcome addition to the Oracle G Zone, both in terms of themes and ability. This is a bit of a hard power creep because now some of these strides like Kama Susano or Amano Sugumi may not be seeing play anymore because of this stride now. Because before, like some of these old strides were actually worth considering, but now not so much. So all in all, it's basically a Susano while gaining GB2. So now you don't have to worry about G guarding into your Ichikishima on turn 4. And also you don't have to worry about counterblast because it's free. So even better, because one thing you might do is even if you do get the heal, you G guard, but you might find that you don't have counterblast, and therefore you can't do Ichikishima's draw 2 by G flipping to get the GB3. So it helps there to have this stride as well, so that now you're going to Ichi no matter what. And yeah, it's very good for that. Plus, if you're not striding and you have to bank on drawing a hill, well, there's going to be some games, the odd games, where you don't even see the hill at all, and then you just fall behind. So very good. It gives a safety net to the deck as well. Like this complements the playstyle of Oracle Think Tank, unlike Sterling Witch Momo, the previous one, which didn't really feel like a. It didn't really feel like it had any cool synergies. So the last one was very boring and uninspiring. This is fun. Like this is actually more interesting. Now, but the thing is that this card, it's useful with cards like Amaterasu Ichikishima, And it's also technically a Susanoo strat, so you can just dump in any Oracle Think Tank deck with Amaterasu and Ichikishima, the grade 2 is in. So you can pretty much just combine the engine in any deck and still harness their potential better, especially because it's now going to be like a common first stride. So it's pretty good for that. Now, as for the overtrigger, there's been talk about like using overtriggers. Thing is, it doesn't happen all the time. Although yes, there is a fair amount of games you can dig for an overtrigger because it's Oracle Think Tank, and you do have potentially cards like Susanoo or something else that might reveal. Technically, you could dig a little bit into finding overtrigger, but the thing is, you're not getting the additional effect part of the skill, so it doesn't really make it as nuts. It's 100 million basically as a vanilla. So really, if your opponent just plays one of the new broken G guards like the Shadow Paladin one, which now, by the way, means Shadow Paladins are going to fear you less, or they're playing maybe a hand trap, then it's not really that big a deal in some matchups. In some matchups, yeah, this will be quite scary, but now there's like increasingly a bit more matchups now that don't really care as much. Raw Paladins is now a new one that's been added because in the time that I haven't had the chance to record this video, I've now seen the Raw Paladin G card, which turns your grade 2 into a perfect card. So, you know, you've got like some more clans now that can basically just counter that over trigger combo that everyone's so scared of. And even then, there's a Waka Hirome play that people are talking about. Yes, you can get over trigger with this, and you can keep the over trigger in hand, but Waka Hirome isn't really a good stride to follow up with either because, again, hand traps, G guards that have PG abilities, even Grand Blue, which have had it for a long time, they'll just shut you down anyway. You're not going to do anything unless you play Battles of Trifle, then sure. But Battles of Trifle only works against perfect guards from the hand, so there are G guards that play around you. So if you're going against Grand Blue, you're going against Shadow Paladins, even Royal Paladins, then well, you're done for. So just bear that in mind. It's not like amazing. It's not a new main play. I'd still say that Ichikishima is your main second stride with this. Not Waka Hirome, but Waka Hirome will be something worth just kind of, if you can fit it in, you could run it as your second stride. You've also got to remember that it's on attack Oracle, so having the hand size can be tricky as well, especially if your opponent is like playing a very aggressive deck. So Waka Hirome just stays as like one of those situational kind of cards, I would say, rather than like a main strategy. But really, Ichikishima is where it's at because it will shut down all those G guards that they've been revealing in Premium Collection, or P Series actually. I think it's called P Clan Collection, is that right? So it will shut all that down. And speaking of G guards they can shut down, we've got the Oracle Think Tank G Guardian as well, Octagonal Magus apparently, which, by the way, she looks so different to the original one. I don't know if you guys have seen her art, but she does not look the same. She had green hair in the original one. She was grade 1. But yeah, I've always kind of felt I just wanted to play an octagonal Magus in my non-Magus decks because obviously I didn't want to play main hexagonal Magus. I want to main a Susanoo deck. So now we've got a G-Guard that does have octagonal Magus' skill. It's basically on plays count +1 and you can choose 2 grades from 0 to 3. So you can't choose grade 4, which there are no grade 4s anyway. And you can't choose grade 5s like Valkyrian, for example, if you want to play Valkyrian in the deck. So you declare them, and then the revealed card is a grade you declared, you just add it to your hand, and if you do, it's an extra 15k shield. So it's a lot of shield, it's more shield than Amaterasu. So sometimes you'll know what the top card of your deck is, but even if you don't, the thing that's really cool is that you can just blindly declare grade 2 or 3, and then you just know that even though it's going to be poor for a draw, if it happens to be, well, a heal trigger, it goes into your hand because of the grade 3 heals. So that's pretty good if you're able to chain into another one. If it happens to be Amaterasu, you're instantly going to get that 10k to Vanguard ability, which will make up for not drawing into a great card. There's Ichikishima as well, grade 2. Same thing. You get to reveal that and blind top card, 10k to Vanguard. So there's a few blind targets. So if you just select grade 2 and 3, even blindly, you could try and get the trigger. If it happens to be grade 1, then well, too bad. But if it happens to be a trigger, okay, sure, you don't draw the card, but the trigger gets damage checked if you have room to take damage. So there are some ways you can, even in a blind situation, use this card to your advantage to find like something to try and build some defense. Like you've got a little bit of leverage, a bit of RNG in your favor to sort of try to manipulate, if that even makes sense. But that being said, 15k shield's also very handy. So I think they've definitely given us what we wanted. Like, this is definitely a skill I've wanted, because the thing is with Balthazar Bavros is that you always have to draw first before you reveal the next card. And obviously Amaterasu doesn't let you reveal the top card as a G Guardian. So this card does what has been missing, which is revealing the first card off the top of your deck, just like the original Octagonal Magus from Magus, but you can only use that with a Magus Vanguard. But now we've got a G Guard that does it, which is the new Octagonal Magus, without needing a Magus Vanguard. So they've now fulfilled a gap in something that Oracle Think Tank could reliably do before. So very good. So yeah, I pretty much have hyped up 2 specific cards during these reveals, which is Amaterasu and Ichikishima, the grade 2. So it's been good for all that, really. So other than that, I will probably come back with more stuff to talk about. But until then, I will see you guys later, and goodbye.